On my 28th birthday, I discovered the amazing truth. My family's surprise party was for my sister. Sarah Reynolds stared at the invitation, her hands trembling as jealousy twisted in her gut like a serpent. The ornate script glared at her, bold letters proclaiming Lisa's impending celebration, a grand affair for the esteemed attorney who just won the case of the year. Sarah felt the walls of her simplicity close in, her modest life anchored by her relentless support for a family that echoed praise only in Lisa's direction. She had always been the shadow, the one who sacrificed her dreams for others, and now her birthday was about to slip through her fingers, eclipsed by her sister's spotlight once again. Every calculation of her own birthday plans felt trivial next to the grandeur of Lisa's success. Determined not to cry, she immersed herself in her routine as a medical assistant, a life divided between earnest, late-night study sessions and monotonous shifts filled with caring for others. Yet, with the clock ticking down to her special day, the weight of expectation pressed heavier. She craved acknowledgement from the family that adored Lisa. Did they even know her dreams of attending medical school? Or was she just the family's backup, always ready to be their support? Feeling reckless, Sarah stormed outside for fresh air, her heart racing against the confines of her chest. It was then she saw Mrs. Thompson, the elderly neighbor, sitting on her porch, her weathered face crinkled into a warm smile, an invitation for a chat. "You know, dear," Mrs. Thompson began, her voice crackling like the leaves underfoot, "my children had their own journeys, but it was my quiet strength that got them to where they are now." Sarah's breath caught. How could a small, simple life have so much meaning? For the first time, Sarah dared to envision a life beyond sacrifice, ignited by the woman's words. Her fingers brushed the invitation in her pocket once more, but doubt gnawed at her, haunting her determination. What if she failed? What if she stumbled while her sister soared? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The festivity of the surprise party rang through the streets, laughter spilling into the fading day, drowning out her resolve. Was this just another shattering reminder of her insignificance? As she stood at the edge of the gathering and watched her family beam with pride for Lisa, an urgent flame ignited inside her. Did anyone notice how invisible she felt? The clock ticked on, the air grew thick, and she recognized that finding her voice was pivotal. As her mother finally called for attention, a fragile moment hung in the air. Could this be the recognition she yearned for? Or was it merely another dismissal masked as pity? Sarah's heart pounded. She could almost taste the bitterness rising in her throat. Would they finally hear her? Even if she was terrified, she knew she couldn't hide anymore. Amid the clinking glasses and swirling laughter, she felt the cusp of her truth, ready to erupt. The darkness of her struggle surged, and as the room fell silent, her breath hitched, preparing for the confrontation that could change everything or seal her in silence forever. As the silence blanketed the room, Sarah's heart thudded like a drum, each beat pulling at her thoughts. It was now or never. With every fiber of her being, she wrestled with the desire for visibility in a space that had historically sidelined her. The anticipation of speaking up clashed with the fear of stepping into the unknown. What if her words were met with indifference or scoffed in the name of familial loyalty? She inhaled deeply, her lungs expanding against the tightness that had settled there hours earlier. Memories stacked on memories flooded her mind. Lisa's academic accolades, the endless praises bestowed upon her, while Sarah's triumphs remained buried under the weight of compliance and acceptance. The need for recognition surged within her. It was time to dissolve the silence that had defined her existence. "Can I say something?" Her voice cut through the stillness, trembling yet resolute. A few heads turned, curiosity flickering in her family's eyes, but the weight of unacknowledged affection threatened to choke her words. They weren't used to hearing her voice in such contexts. She was their dependable caretaker, reliably supportive. She could sense the shift in their energy. Her mother's smile wavered, momentarily confused, while Lisa's brow furrowed with surprise. The stark transition made Sarah acutely aware of her position, A performer stepping onto an unfamiliar stage. The room's focus narrowed onto her. And in that moment, stark vulnerability collided with newfound determination. I know today is about Lisa. Sarah struggled initially, feeling the tension in her throat. But it's also my birthday. I need you to hear me. She braced herself against the ocean of emotions swirling within, fighting to keep her voice steady. I've always been proud of you, Lisa, but I feel lost in your shadow. Gasps echoed among the guests, and a heated whisper spread like wildfire, engulfing the room. Don't think of it that way, someone uttered, but Sarah's resolve hardened. The faintest glimmer of pain flickered in Lisa's eyes, but she pressed on. I've spent years placing everyone else's needs ahead of my own, and I've always felt, she faltered, a wave of shame threatening to overthrow her moment of truth. I've always felt like a backup plan. I want you to know I dream of becoming a doctor. Awkward silence carved its way into the joyous atmosphere, but she could feel sincerity radiating from her own honesty. I want to be something beyond a shadow. I am more than just the one who supports. I need to pursue my dreams too. At that moment, she discarded the veil of invisibility. Whether her family understood or embraced her revelation didn't matter, as much as finally articulating what had festered inside her for so long. The tension in the air shifted. She sensed it. Lisa stood, looking caught between clarity and confusion, vulnerability etching itself onto her features. Sarah, she began softly, but before they could delve into the conversation, Sarah turned to her mother. Mom, it's time you saw me too. I need your support, not just for Lisa's journey but for mine. Taking a deep breath, Sarah felt a torrent of emotion well up. A force had been unleashed, exposing her years of emotional neglect and burying resentment. Yet, amid the upheaval, uncertainty lingered. Would their acceptance transform into supportive resolve, or would her revelation catalyze a rift? She felt the weight of anticipation charge the air as the silence began to spiral into a cacophony of responses. The potential for healing was palpable, but so was the risk of further alienation. A dialogue hung precariously on the precipice of an unresolved need. In that moment, Sarah recognized the stakes of her authenticity and the transformative power it held. Even if she stumbled, her journey toward self-assertion had officially begun, a birth of her own amid the celebrations that as family members began whispering. She braced herself for their reactions, her fear and hope grappling for control as the moment stretched. It was time for decisions, and in that chaos she braced for the confrontation of her life, the one that would dictate her future. What awaited her next? Would her family rally around her newfound ambition? Or would the rift become unbridgeable? The thought sent a jolt of urgency through her. This was only the beginning. The whispers cascaded like a rush of water, flooding the room with uncertainty. Sarah could feel the weight of conversation pressing against her, each murmur drowning out the confidence she had just mustered. She wrung her hands, trying to suppress the tremor in her fingers as she focused on the room's tension. Was this what liberation felt like, an uncomfortable mix of exhilaration and fear? Lisa stepped forward, her eyes pleading yet perplexed. Sarah, I didn't know you felt this way. The softness in her tone struck a chord within Sarah. For years, Sarah had been the caregiver, the support beam holding the family together. But in that moment, perhaps she could be more than just that. Perhaps she could be a pillar of her own. Do you really not see me? Sarah replied, wholeheartedly challenging Lisa's perception as she gauged the discomfort in her sister's demeanor. I've been here all along, organizing, planning, smiling while I stumbled through my own life. It's time my dreams take center stage. The room tensed, and an uneasiness swept over the onlookers. Her mother's face twisted into a fragile mix of surprise and dismay. A thought crossed Sarah's mind, erasing the divide that had dictated family dynamics for years. Was her mother truly oblivious to her hidden depths? No. She wasn't a ghost. She was flesh with aspirations, hopes, a pulse of life buried within family priorities. Maybe I should have spoken up sooner, she conceded, feeling the urge to fracture the silence that had lingered. I let everyone else's successes overshadow my own, until I didn't even recognize my achievements anymore. Her mother broke the stillness with a sigh, the reverberations of her weighty disappointment palpable in the air. I never wanted you to feel that way. Your talents, I just thought you preferred it this way. But that's just it, Sarah countered, sharp edges of resolve hardening her voice. I never had the chance to voice what I wanted, so I allowed you to believe I was content. But I want to be a doctor. I want to mold my own path and stop fading away. Lisa's eyes widened, capturing the weight of Sarah's declaration. I never meant to overshadow you. I've just been so focused on my own journey. I thought you were supporting me, I was, but at the expense of my own aspirations. The emotional tide swelled again, mixing vulnerability with conviction. As the confrontation unfurled, Sarah began to feel an unexpected shift within her. Questions of self-doubt surfaced, yet she clung to the new determination that had ignited. She didn't just see herself as an assistant anymore. She wasn't merely a side companion in life's game. Every moment wasted in silence felt achingly precious, and now that she had gathered the courage to speak, the thrill of her own voice stirred inside her. If you love me as your sister, you'll understand this isn't merely a confession. This is my plea for recognition. As her words sank into the room's atmosphere, she felt her foundation solidify. It was a revelation not just for her family, but for herself. Embracing the rawness of her truth felt like shedding layers of insecurity she had worn for years. The eyes in the room continued to pierce through her, each gaze a mixture of anticipation and shock. Yet, deeper down, Sarah sensed an incredible potential for change simmering beneath all the reactions. Mom, she continued, turning her attention back. I need your guidance and support on this journey. I want you to believe in me. A heartbeat later, she noticed a flicker of something approaching acknowledgement in her mother's face. Could it be? Could they rally around her ambitions, envisioning a new dynamic among them? But instead of an immediate response, a shadow loomed over her newfound courage. The risk of rejection still lingered, a tide that could pull her back into the depths. Suddenly, her breaths grew quick. The crux of confrontation rested between them, and she recognized the stark reality of risking closeness for her own dreams. The inevitability of facing the unknown loomed larger than before, and her pulse quickened. In anticipation of what would follow, what would they say? Would they embrace this version of Sarah, or was her desire for autonomy about to fracture an already delicate familial bond? As silence encased the room once more, the looming moment of reckoning seemed to echo in the air, taunting her with its uncertainty and promise of transformation. The silence had transformed the room into a chamber of suspended disbelief. Sarah's heart pounded, each beat a stark reminder of her vulnerability. She could almost hear the cacophony of thoughts racing through her family's minds, like an echo of her own. Was she brave or reckless? Just moments before, she had stood tall, ready to reclaim her identity. Now, she felt the ground shifting beneath her. Lisa stepped closer, her expression shifting from confusion to something resembling empathy. I didn't realize how much you were holding in, she whispered, her voice wavering as if balancing on the precipice of understanding. What can we do to help? For a brief moment, Sarah experienced a flicker of hope. Perhaps this confrontation would indeed lead to alignment, the kind she had longed for in their familial dynamics. But then reality hit, plunging her back into doubt. Could one moment of honesty dismantle years of silent compliance? And just as swiftly, would it forge a stronger bond or splinter them further apart? Fears shadowed her thoughts, whispers diminishing the light of her newfound determination. The cracks in her foundation, though now exposed, still glimmered with potential. Could she really build something steadfast for herself amid the family's collective history? Taking a deep breath, she decided she needed clarity both for herself and for her family. Can we just take a moment and talk? She urged, scanning their faces, seeking the light of acknowledgement flickering in the depths of their sentiments. I don't want this to become another fight. I want us to actually listen to one another. Her mother straightened, and for the first time, her expression transformed from dismay to something more contemplative. Honey, we love you. You always come off as satisfied, she admitted with a bittersweet smile. You've been our rock, but maybe we've treated you more like an accessory than a person in your own right. The tension in the room shifted slightly, and with it, Sarah felt an invisible thread beginning to weave their voices into one fabric, where understanding could manifest. She realized it was a two-way street. For her dreams to thrive, her family also needed to evolve. We need to openly navigate how we support each other, Sarah proposed, her own voice resonating with conviction. It starts here, it starts with my dreams. But your support doesn't mean I'll only be your helper. I want to embrace my own journey too. Lisa nodded slowly as if digesting every word. And it's okay not to be okay, right? To admit we've all been absorbed in our own worlds, making us miss each other's needs. The understanding began to bind them, a delicate yet transformative thread of empathy. Moments turned into breaths of uncharted territory as their conversation unfolded gently. Fears manifested in small confessions, aspirations mingling with regrets. Sarah's heart swelled with an emotion she hadn't dared to feel for years: belonging. Within this space of vulnerability lay the promise of new beginnings. She was determining not just her future but also redefining connections. Yet, as the warmth enveloped her like a comforting cloak, an undercurrent of unresolved apprehension began to surface. The fear of languishing in the comfort of newfound understanding could trap her in the very cage she yearned to escape. Would her family's willingness to adapt truly stretch to supporting her ambitions with actionable steps? The momentary clarity threatened to dissolve when a harsh reality breached her thoughts. Taking the leap into medicine would require concrete planning, fiercely balancing her past obligations while enhancing her future. As the discussion dwindled, woven with threads of hope and aspirations, Sarah realized she faced another critical juncture. It was one thing to voice her ambitions. It was another to transform those dreams into reality. She leaned into her newfound resolve, mapping her next steps in her mind, ready to confront the realities of securing her future. And that moment of reflection, she felt invigorated but also daunted. Rendering all her potential aspirations into tangible outcomes felt an insurmountable task. Leaning back, she inhaled deeply, bracing for the impending challenges ahead. What concrete steps would she need to take? Would she have the strength to reconcile personal growth with familial obligation? And above all, how would she navigate the journey toward her dreams now that the curtain had lifted, unveiling her true self to those she loved the most? The days that followed the revelation felt both exhilarating and weighty. Each morning, Sarah woke up with a sense of anticipation mixed with anxiety, her mind buzzing with plans and possibilities. The intimate exchanges with her family lingered in her thoughts, illuminating the path ahead but also steeping it in complexity. How could she translate those conversations into actionable growth? Repeating her goals aloud became a daily ritual, turning her dreams into affirmations that flew through her consciousness like confetti. I will enroll in medical school. I will choose a specialty that fuels my passion. Yet, repetition felt intangible without a foundation, and Sarah needed clarity beyond mere words. She pulled out a sheet of paper, laying out a roadmap that reflected not just her aspirations but concrete steps to achieve them. Enrolling in a prerequisite course was an easy start, yet she hesitated. Work commitments loomed large, and returning to study meant making sacrifices. Could her family understand that stepping back from their needs didn't equate to neglecting them? The inner tussle was real, and she realized that this would be the first test of her newfound resolve at work. Every glance toward her colleagues felt charged with meaning. They remained blissfully unaware of her inner turmoil, laughing and chatting in the fluorescent-lit break room. Still, Sarah felt an inkling of disappointment as she had become almost invisible in her drive to care for others. Today, however, she resolved to change that narrative. Instead of sidestepping moments of self-promotion, she defined a way to use her voice effectively. Why don't we brainstorm ideas for the upcoming project? She suggested while leaning against the doorway of their shared workspace. Each head turned, momentarily distracted from repetitive tasks. I think we need to ensure that we're not just streamlining our efforts but also carving out space for individual contributions. It took mere moments for the initial silence to melt into animated dialogue. The tension eased as ideas bloomed, each suggestion building upon the last. With that spirit of collaboration, Sarah engaged, diving into suggestions herself, honing her leadership quietly but purposefully. This was her first step towards owning her presence. Yet, as invigorating as it felt, her heart raced with the weight of uncertainty. Was it enough? With each idea voiced, doubts swirled, unraveling a past tethered to servitude and support roles. What if they didn't see her contribution seriously? What if they labeled her as just another team player rather than a potential leader? The fear cut deeply, yet a flicker of determination challenged that narrative. She wasn't waiting for validation anymore. She was actively participating in her own growth journey. By the time she arrived home, the air felt different. Conversations lingered over dinner, the tentative bonds growing warmer, easier. Yet Sarah was still navigating the labyrinth within herself. Could she continue to be the supportive figure at home, while fiercely propelling her personal ambitions? The question prowled around her thoughts, amplifying her worries. The delicate balance of love and ambition hung in the air like a tightrope walk. Would her family continue to support her? She reflected on the commitment discussed earlier, unsure if their words could withstand the test of time, as she fully stepped into her evolving identity. "Mom, could we talk about the logistics of me taking on a medical course?" Sarah asked cautiously, her voice trembling as she ventured into vulnerable territory again. Her mother paused, spoon halfway to her mouth, her expression shifting into something more thoughtful, slightly alarmed. "Your father and I always wanted the best for you, Sarah. But it's a big commitment. We want you to succeed, and we need to figure out how this fits into everything." That moment hung precariously, both hopeful and fraught with challenge. This was the accountability she craved, yet it felt charged, filled with uncharted expectations. Would they rally behind her or cling to their conventional idea of her? As they continued their conversation, building tentative possibilities and nurturing respect, Sarah felt a burgeoning sense of empowerment. She was no longer willing to segregate her ambitions from familial expectations, but realization swept through her. Adapting to a new identity would demand more than dialogue. It would require sacrifices, a concrete shift in the family dynamics she had relied upon. She would transform not just herself but also their relationships. Days stretched ahead, packed with challenges, opportunities, and above all risks. How would she navigate this evolving dance with her family, ensuring they understood her new rhythm? The thought drummed insistently in her mind as she settled down for the night, imagining all the possibilities looming just ahead. 더 크고 강한 변화, 피할 수 없는 진실이 그녀를 기다리고 있었다. Would she summon the courage to face what lay ahead? The uncertainty whispered again, teasing her resolve. What profound truth awaited her as she chose to pursue the life only she could define? The morning sun filtered through her curtains, casting a warm glow that felt almost taunting. Sarah lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, overwhelmed by the complexity of the preceding discussions. Every encounter at work and each moment with her family replayed like a movie, giving her both hope and pause. Today marked a new beginning, or at least it was supposed to. Determined to uphold her commitments, she prepared to take her first step toward medical school. With every brushstroke on her canvas of aspirations, reality started to form. Yet, the fears of inadequacy haunted her. What if she didn't measure up in class? What if she was still seen as the caregiver, the one who always put others first? As she dressed, the reflection in the mirror mirrored her dual identity, the hopeful student on a precipice, and the forever nurturer reluctant to let go. She took a deep breath and whispered her affirmations again, but the unapologetic tone of determination had yet to solidify in her heart. A crucial test loomed ahead at work. Sarah stepped into the break room, where the hum of chatter filled her. The familiar faces couldn't discern her inner turmoil, but today she felt a flicker of defiance. Clenching her fists, she sought to reclaim her narrative once more. "Hey team," she announced, drawing eyes as she mentally girded herself for what came next. "What if we revamp our approach for the client pitch? I have some fresh ideas that I think could elevate our strategy." A murmur of intrigue rippled through the group. Encouragement buoyed her spirits, igniting a fire she had long stifled. As she voiced her thoughts, she felt the weight of doubt lifting slightly. She presented her ideas with a new clarity, building each suggestion on the enthusiasm radiating from her colleagues. But as the conversation flowed, her stomach knotted with the underbelly of anxiety. Would they actually value her input? Or would it be another fleeting moment of recognition that ultimately faded, leaving her on her own once more? They engaged, and while a few lingered in ambivalence, others began picking apart her suggestions. Sarah's pulse quickened. This was no longer just an idea. It was her opportunity to assert herself. "I believe that by incorporating these elements, we can not only appeal to the client, but redefine our approach significantly." As she spoke, she saw appreciation spark in the eyes of a couple of her colleagues, and with that recognition, doubt began to splinter apart. Yet her heart raced toward another realization. She needed to guard this newfound stance fiercely. Leadership could drown in silence if left unobserved. Lunchtime came, and Sarah found a quiet spot outside, wrestling with her thoughts again. The exhilarating highs of the morning confronted her inner voice echoes of past failures, cautioning her against becoming too ambitious. But the thrill of using her voice ignited a desire for growth that felt too powerful to suppress. Embrace the discomfort, she whispered to herself, the words a silent mantra. Transformation was a volatile dance, and she was fueled by both fear and exhilaration. For every step she took towards her ambitions, she also teetered on the edge of unfamiliar territory, a place where rejection could resound. Returning from lunch, she found her colleagues bustling around, finalizing plans for the pitch meeting. The familiar tension in the air was both energizing and intimidating. Sarah tightened her jaw, recognizing a burgeoning determination to not be sidelined any longer. That evening, a careful approach awaited her back home. Discussions with her family lingered in her mind. She felt an urgency to reaffirm her journey before the momentum she built slipped away. I need to carve out this path for myself, she thought defiantly. Yet, vulnerability throbbed beneath her confident facade. Dinner's ready. Her mother called from the kitchen, jolting her back to reality. Steeling herself, Sarah embraced her choice as she joined her family around the table. I've been thinking about taking a preparation course for medical school. It's time to take genuine steps forward. As her parents exchanged glances, a flicker of trepidation washed over her. Would they support her? Or would her announcement force them into a defensive stance? What do you really want, Sarah? Her father asked, a question directed at her heart. The air charged with anticipation, and with every ounce of courage she could muster, she braced herself for the response that could redefine everything. What if they challenged her ambition? What if this became a moment of deep misunderstanding? Her skin prickled with fear and hope. This conversation could either fortify their bonds or fracture the delicate balance they had maintained. Her conviction would soon meet their realities, but at what cost? The risk felt like the only true path ahead. Would she emerge stronger or shatter under pressure? The thought lingered, a cloud framing her burgeoning resolve. The moment of truth approached, and her heart raced, ready to confront whatever awaited her. The dinner table was set, but the atmosphere felt more akin to an interrogation room than a family gathering. Sarah's stomach churned as her father's question hung in the air, a heavy weight. She could feel the duality of the moment, her intentions battling against the fear of her family's expectations. They looked at her, yet the implications of her revelation loomed larger than their expressions. What if they didn't understand? Taking a deep breath, Sarah replied, I want to challenge myself. Medicine feels like my true calling. I want to help people in a way that goes beyond words. The sincerity in her voice reverberated in the small dining room, amplifying her own uncertainty. Her mother shifted uncomfortably. But it's such a big commitment, Sarah. Have you thought about how this will impact your work? You're doing so well, moving up it's a risk. She held her breath, the moment she had anticipated now teetering on the edge of conflict. I have thought about it. Progress in my career is important, but I can't ignore this dream any longer. I need to see if I can be more than just the reliable worker. I want to be someone who matters in a deeper way. The table was silent for a moment, and Sarah could sense her heartbeat in her ears. She saw her father nod slightly, contemplating her words. It's good to take risks, but you should have a plan, he finally advised. Perhaps researching more into med school and how it would fit your life could be a step. Relief shot through Sarah, but it was tempered by the awareness that her journey had only just begun. Her parents weren't against her aspirations, yet doubt flickered in the room. Her mother still wore an expression that suggested hesitation. That, more than anything, stung. Let us look at it together, Sarah offered, eager to bridge their apprehensions. Maybe there are courses I can take while working. After dinner, she retreated to her room, her mind buzzing. For every encouragement, her subconscious tossed reminders of her past failures. The thoughts circled a cacophony of voices saying she couldn't balance it all. But wouldn't her parents' cautious backing be the launchpad she needed? With renewed determination, she opened her laptop and pulled up a med school preparation course. As she perused the options, a gasp betrayed her, punctuated with excitement and nerves. These programs looked rigorous, igniting a mix of fear and aspiration that was all at once exhilarating. After a whirlwind of contemplation, she clicked to enroll in the introductory class. Confirmation pinged in her inbox like a starter-esque gun echoing in a wide-open field. This was a moment of action, a step she had fought for, yet the gravity of commitment settled upon her shoulders. Beneath it, however, a fierce joy flickered. The idea that she belonged in a place demanding growth rather than stagnation propelled her thoughts forward. A burgeoning energy stirred within as she settled into bed, holding the promise of her decisions behind her eyelids. Yet as she lay there, she couldn't shake the question that circled her mind. Would her family fully embrace this new version of her? The fear of them questioning her could easily morph into a crippling burden. She would need to reassure them, to demonstrate her determination not just in words but in action. The following day at work dawned with potential. As Sarah shared her decision with her colleagues, she noticed their reactions were filled with admiration. They rallied around her idea of balancing work and study, recognizing her ambition as inspiring rather than reckless. Their laughter and encouragement cemented her resolve, turning her plans into communal aspirations. But underlying it all, uncertainty budded anew. How would she navigate this balance? How would her weekends transform into study marathons instead of leisurely hours? The idea was intimidating, but the thrill of the challenge poured gasoline on her internal fire. "Sarah, are you ready for the pitch meeting today?" her colleague asked, disrupting her flow. "More than ever," she replied, fake confidence, masking a tinge of apprehensiveness swirling inside. As they set up for the meeting, she couldn't ignore the creeping doubt. Was she pushing ahead too fast? Would this take a toll at home? The meeting commenced, and her chest tightened as she positioned herself to present. This moment was no longer just about work. It intertwined her journey to assert her unpredictability. The slide illuminated her voice, but as she spoke, an internal voice cautioned her. Was this the phase of grand ambition she had always dreamed of, or was it naive presumption? With a decision lingering on the tip of her tongue, she prepared to pivot into the unknown. Just as the audacity of it all spiked her adrenaline, the answer began to crystallize, but ahead loomed another question. Would she claim her place without losing sight of who she was? The tension of her aspirations danced close, and she realized the true test was just beginning. Would she be brave enough to face it? As the meeting wrapped up, Sarah felt a brief surge of relief mixed with the lingering strain of uncertainty. She had presented well, articulating her vision, but a nagging doubt intertwined with the thrill of her recent commitments gnawed at her stomach. The applause of her colleagues faded into background noise as she collected her things, her mind racing with calculations and projections for her future. Once back at her desk, she opened her email, scrolling through a flurry of messages. The noise of the office around her seemed to fade as she thought about how to juggle med school preparations alongside work. Her heart sank slightly at the list of obligations, upcoming deadlines, team projects, and now her classes looming ahead. Was she straying too far from whom she had been? Then her phone vibrated, pulling her back from her spiraling thoughts. It was a message from her mother, an unexpected check-in. "How are you feeling about everything? We love you and support your dreams," it read. The warmth in her heart contrasted sharply with her internal chaos. "Just a little overwhelmed," Sarah replied, deciding she needed to push through the uncertainty and establish control. But every moment spent on the phone, reassuring her mother, weighed against forging her identity. Was she truly ready to be the person she envisioned, or would she crumble under the pressure to maintain both her family expectations and her own aspirations? The drive home that evening was difficult. Traffic seemed eternal, and while other drivers were focused on their own worlds, Sarah felt like she was caught in a tornado of internal conflict. She ran through each scenario in her mind: her new course, her work presentations, and her family dynamics. Images collided, sketching out various realities. Some filled her with hope: her mother smiling at her graduation, her father prideful in her accomplishments. Others birthed a visceral fear of failure, of falling short in both her pursuit of medicine and her duties at work. Upon arriving home, she entered to find her family engaged in their usual evening routine, dinner preparations amidst laughter. It was comforting but felt oddly constrictive, like stepping back into an old shell. As she joined them, a familiar path replaced the thrill of new ambitions. Distracted moments of sharing laughs and stories faded quickly when her father asked, "Any updates on your course?" "I enrolled in the introductory class," she replied, her heart racing. There it was, the first brave admission of her path forward. Yet her voice remained steady, fueled by resolve. The room fell silent for just a moment, an exhale before any responses kicked in, and she felt the familiar anxiety pooling in her stomach. Her mother's face lit up first. "That's great, honey. It sounds real and serious. Just remember to balance your time." The validation felt good. Yet the underlying pressure to meet expectations twisted within her. Was accepting the praises affirming her decision or reinforcing an unspoken obligation? She struggled with this newfound reality, grappling with the desire to prove herself outside her family's perceptions. Her brother interjected with a playful comment, and suddenly the tension cracked like an ice over a lake in spring. But the air still held unvoiced questions. Would they support her as a medical student when she couldn't be the sister they were accustomed to? She felt the weight of their attachments binding her. After dinner, she retreated to her room, a sanctuary bolstered against the uncertainty. She pulled out her notes, determined to make progress. Yet, as she opened the textbook, a familiar dread settled in. What if she was making the wrong choice? What if her efforts siphoned away the energy needed for her existing responsibilities? As she delved into the material, the hours slipped by unnoticed. The more she absorbed, the more she recognized an uncanny pull towards this academic journey. But the tug-of-war with her family's perception loomed over it all. Just then, a sudden text pinged on her phone. It was a reminder from the med school prep site of an upcoming intro seminar. The opportunity to meet others, to connect, perhaps even find allies in this battle for balance stirred excitement within her. Yet a ghost of doubt lingered. Be bold enough to step into the unknown, or retreat to the safe confines of the familiar? The notion resonated deep within her, mirroring the fears that had surfaced so often. Restlessness consumed her, and with determination simmering just beneath the surface, she decided to go to that seminar. The decision required a recalibration of her commitments and a step away from the perception of her life so far. But it was necessary. As she laid back against her pillow, the spark of rebellion danced in her mind. With newfound clarity, she breathed a resolute thought into the dark. This was not just a leap of faith. It symbolized the reclamation of her own narrative. What lay ahead was more than an academic endeavor. It was a confrontation with the construct of who she thought she had to be. Uncertainty thrummed steadily in her veins, aligning with her pulse, but it was the feeling that crystallized into determination. The next day would unveil her true test. How to embrace the chaos and assert herself unshackled. Not just for her but for all the expectations trailing behind. And with that resolve she veered towards a question that continued to haunt her. How could she redefine the boundaries set by those around her? As her day of reckoning dawned, a thrilling edge beckoned her forward, urging her to take on the storm still bearing down. The next morning, Sarah rose earlier than usual, the day spilling bright through her window as if urging her toward the seminar. Would this be where she found clarity, or only a deeper confusion? She stepped out of bed, determination threading through her thoughts, almost tangible. Yet she felt the weight of her family's expectations tugging her back, like a tethering string that threatened to pull her into the familiar. As she prepared for the day, she meticulously chose her outfit, a simple but crisp blazer over a fitted top, an ensemble that embodied both professionalism and ambition. Each article of clothing felt like armor, preparing her for the challenge ahead, helping her to carve out an identity separate from her family's narrative. The drive was punctuated by the unmistakable hum of anticipation and apprehension. Her mind flicked between potential conversations with peers and the alternative scenarios that could unfold. Could she really connect with others grappling with the same pressures? The thought filled her with excitement, but it was underscored by fear. The specter of rejection haunted her. Walking into the seminar felt like entering a different world. The room buzzed with energy, people mingling, sharing stories of their dreams and ambitions. It was intoxicating. She found herself gravitating towards a group engaged in animated conversation, a mix of uncertainty and eagerness bubbling in her chest. Each laugh, each story shared, seemed to tighten the invisible strings of her bonds with her own past. "Hey, is this your first seminar?" a vibrant woman with curly hair asked, flashing a warm smile. "Yeah, I'm just trying to figure things out," Sarah replied, surprised at her own candor. "Me too. Enrolled for the admissions next year. Have to research everything from study methods to self-care." The woman's self-assuredness acted like a buoy, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah felt anchored amidst her swirling doubts. As they exchanged ideas, Sarah listened, keenly aware of how her peers articulated their objectives. Each shared experience unveiled a truth. They were all grappling with their own fears and aspirations. For the first time, she questioned her tendency to feel isolated in her struggle. Were these individuals really so different from her? Another voice chimed in. "I thought I'd be the only one feeling this way," a young man said, looking relieved. "There is so much pressure. It's almost overwhelming." The resonance of his words struck deeply. It wasn't just the coursework she feared. It was the suffocating anxiety of juggling expectations from her family and her own ambitions. Would she be able to transform these conversations into a support network for herself? Was this the gateway to recalibrating her path? Emboldened, Sarah began sharing her story, revealing fragments of her struggles, letting them tumble out before her newfound companions. With each word, it felt as though she chipped away at the insecurity she had held onto for too long. After the seminar, Sarah lingered, engaging in conversations that transcended mere networking. She saw glimpses of perspectives that highlighted her own internal struggles. Yet, the newfound connections also held an unspoken promise that she wasn't alone. There was strength in vulnerability, a lesson she started to identify deeply as she returned to her car. An exhilarating mix of hope and resolve surged within her. This was a significant step forward. Yet lurking beneath the excitement was a nagging question, that age-old anxiety binding her still. Would her family still embrace this version of her that was slowly emerging? The fear of judgment crept in again. The drive home felt lighter yet adorned with new burdens to consider as ideas cascaded through her mind, ways to approach her family about her evolving identity. She began structuring her thoughts, rehearsing how to navigate potential misunderstandings without sacrificing her aspirations. Could she articulate this path without fears tethering her? As she pulled into the driveway, her heart raced with the realization that her journey would entail not just personal exploration, but an abduction from complacency. Steeling herself, Sarah stepped out into the warmth of the fading sun, ready to share her insights with her family, but acutely aware that this conversation could fracture or solidify the ties that bound them. The moment was shimmering with potential outcomes, each dragging her toward the inevitable tension of the discussion ahead. Stepping inside, a familiar thought loomed over her. How could she navigate the discrepancies between who she had been and who she was becoming? And what had once felt like an anchor now transformed into a powerful question that loomed ahead. How much of herself could she share before the inevitable clash with her family's expectations began? The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of transformation for Sarah. Each day became a canvas where she painted her aspirations, balancing her shifts as a medical assistant with rigorous study sessions that ignited a spark she hadn't experienced before. Armed with determination, she began her foundational course, pushing through late nights of complex textbooks and early mornings filled with fervent notes. Gradually, she transitioned from feeling like a backup character in her own life to claiming the leading role. The self-doubt that had shadowed her for years started to fade, replaced by a palpable conviction. Achievements began to stack upon one another: high scores on quizzes, positive feedback from instructors, and the beginnings of friendships with peers equally passionate about medicine. For the first time, Sarah felt not just competent but confident. Yet, with every achievement, her internal dialogue remained vigilant. The thoughts concerning familial expectations and her place within her family nagged at her, echoing in her mind. Did her family truly support her? Would they still see her as someone valuable if she pursued her dream of becoming a doctor? The questions lingered, but they no longer held her back. Instead, they propelled her toward an important conversation she needed to have. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, Sarah gathered her family to share not only her experiences but to lay bare her aspirations. The living room buzzed with casual laughter and warmth, as she felt the apprehension mix with mounting anticipation. This was her moment to redefine their understanding of her, to reshape how they viewed her journey. "Can we sit down for a minute? There is something important I want to share," Sarah began, her voice steady yet filled with emotion. The briskness attracted everyone's attention, and anticipation gripped the air as she summoned the courage to articulate her journey thus far. "I know I haven't always been vocal about my dreams, but I am dedicated to becoming a doctor. I've enrolled in preparatory classes and it's exciting, but I want you all to understand how significant this is for me." As she spoke, small gasps underscored her family's initially surprised expressions. Her dad leaned forward, brows furrowing in thought. "We always knew you would achieve something great, but we were unsure how serious you were about medicine. Felt like you were always just supporting us." Sarah inhaled deeply, feeling a mixture of relief and resolve. "That's exactly it. For so long, I let the family dynamics guide my decisions. Sparing your feelings and focusing on your dreams overshadowed my own. But I am ready to step forward. And I need your support just as you have supported each other. I need to pursue my dream. And it's crucial that I take this path without hesitation." Silence fell over them, a serene blanket weaving through the room. Her mother's gaze softened as she considered her daughter's words. "Sarah, I've seen how hard you've worked and I realize that I perhaps missed the signs. I want you to know we are proud of you. It's time for us to embrace your journey. Not just as an aim but as a crucial part of who you are becoming." That validation hit Sarah with a rush of warmth. Over the next few months, changes within the family unfolded alongside Sarah's journey. They engaged with her studies, discussed class assignments, and celebrated every small achievement she reached, making her feel like more than a footnote in their lives. Encouraged by their curiosity and support, Sarah thrived. Her world became layered with purpose and connection, a blend of personal integrity and familial bonds. As her first term concluded with outstanding grades and a deepening sense of belonging, she realized her evolution was no longer a solitary journey but a bridge connecting her aspirations to her family's unconditional love. With newfound authenticity, she stood on the cusp of her dreams, her heart filled with a sense of accomplishment and purpose. Walking into the school auditorium on graduation day, surrounded by fellow aspiring medical students ready to embark on their journeys ahead, Sarah felt invincible. She had conquered her fears, embraced her ambitions, and transformed from being a shadow to a beacon of hope and inspiration, not only for herself but for every family member that chose to support her. The moment her name echoed through the crowd, signaling her recognition for academic excellence, she smiled, an embodiment of perseverance and growth. Sarah was no longer the backup plan. She had become the architect of her own life story. Emanating from within her was the solid confidence that her aspiration to be a doctor was not only achievable but also deserved, truly a testament to her transformed identity. This was her moment, a culmination of her journey, an extraordinary celebration of self-realization and commitment. Now more than ever, Sarah understood the importance of sharing her experiences and inspiring others. And with that realization, she felt an urgency to connect with those who needed to hear her story, to encourage them to pursue their dreams regardless of external pressures. If you resonate with Sarah's transformation, you need to subscribe now to the channel. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Comment below with your reactions and theories about her journey, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. It's time to uplift those who dream.